This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. This week on the One Girl Revolution podcast, we are so excited to welcome Patuk Glenn, a dynamic leader and the executive director of the Arctic Slope Community Foundation. Patuk is a true force for good, working tirelessly to uplift and support her community in Alaska and throughout the Arctic Slope. Patuk is dedicated to preserving Indigenous culture, creating opportunities for the people of the Arctic Slope, and preserving traditions and opportunities for future generations. But her work doesn't stop there. She's also become a social media queen, using platforms like TikTok and Instagram to amplify critical issues facing women, other individuals, and communities around the world. Whether she's addressing environmental issues, women's empowerment, or advocating for the preservation of Indigenous traditions, Patuk is using her voice to inspire change and bring attention to the stories and issues that need to be elevated. In today's episode, we'll dive into Patuk's incredible life journey, how she's harnessing the power of social media for good, and the incredible work she's doing to support people in the Arctic and rural Alaska. You won't want to miss this incredible conversation with a woman who is truly a trailblazer. She is using every platform she can to make a difference. Here's my conversation with the amazing Patuk. Patuk, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Good to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. I think you're actually the first guest that we've ever had who is currently in Alaska. We've had women from Alaska on the podcast who have moved on and gone different places, but I'm so excited to have you be the first from Alaska. And there's so many things that I want to talk about your story. But one thing that's so interesting to me is you are from Barrow, Alaska, which is the most northern part of the US. And I learned that from watching a couple of your Instagram videos. It's so interesting to me. What is that? What is it like there? What is it like living there?
You know, when I was growing up in Inupiat, and of course the name used to be Barrow. It was Barrow when I lived there and when I was growing up there. You know, I thought that all of Alaska must look like and be like this beautiful place that I call home, right? Alaska is so vast though, right? And growing up there, of course, we live in one of the most extreme parts of the country, extreme when it comes to the climate. And I really do believe a person's environment shapes how that person becomes, right? And so just to help you visualize it, you know, we've got 24-hour darkness for a few months in the winter. We got 24-hour daylight for a few months in the summer. And everything in between is either gaining or losing daylight, right? And because of this extreme situation and being so far north, it is winter most of the time. And I say, I mean, it's all relative, right? It is cold most of the time. And it's like winter-like conditions, what most of the people in the lower 48 would consider of winters. That cold weather means there's snow, there's ice, there's frozen ground most of the year, except for that small little bit of summer where it's 24-hour daylight. It's still cold though. It's still cold. I mean, the warmest it gets in the summer is maybe 65 above at the most, right? And maybe that's for 1 week. Normally it's like 45 degrees in the summer every day. Anyways, it's also very flat. We're on the coast. It is so flat. There's no trees, nothing grows. Maybe over 5 inches tall because the permafrost is about a foot below the ground. And because of this sort of climate that we live in order to survive there, everything is a little bit different. The way that our houses are built are different. The sort of food and diet that we eat is different. And in order for us to be sustainable, really, is that we have to go subsistence hunting and whaling to help feed our families, right? So that's just a little bit to give you a little bit of an understanding of who we are, what it kind of looks like. And because it is so extreme, we can't do it on our own. It takes community. And that is how the Inupiat people have survived there for thousands of generations. We say that we've been there since time immemorial, right? Archaeological records say at least 10,000 years we've been there. We were more nomadic, just 1,000 years ago, even just 200 years ago, we were more nomadic. But now we are settled in communities, yet there are many things that are from our Inupiat heritage and culture that were there 1,000 years ago that are still there today. And that's how we've survived.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to be reading online just about your community and also where you're from, because it was so eye-opening for me and eye-opening for me to see your Instagram videos. And I know we'll talk about that because you've used social media as an outlet to really pull back the curtain and help people see what's really going on. And you're raising awareness on so many different topics and so many different issues. And I think that what you're doing with social media is the positive side of social media. We have so much power. We're more connected than ever online, but we still can be so blind to things that are happening in our world, in our culture, and amongst our sisters and brothers in our own states or in our own country, and just our sisters and brothers around the world. And I think you talking about community is so important because that's a big part of what we believe here at One Girl Revolution is we're stronger together and we can support one another and raise awareness together. We're stronger when we raise awareness together. So I would love to rewind. You shared a little bit about, and being in Alaska and being from Alaska and being a part of the Inuit people. But I would love to hear about you. If we could rewind, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your own story, your own journey, and I guess what led you to what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Inupiat, like I mentioned, and I went to school in Inupiat, kindergarten through 12th grade, right? And my grandmother was an Inupiat language teacher. Many of our teachers were imported from the lower 48. Besides Inupiat language teachers, our regular teachers were people that weren't necessarily of our community, right? I was influenced a lot by school. Both mom and dad worked. So after school, I would go home and, in the 90s, us kids, we didn't have babysitters, right? What was the babysitter? The TV. I'd turn on the TV. I'd learn so much about the world from television and pop culture. It got me excited to learn in a way because I was like, wow, there's this whole other world outside of my own community, right? And so I would be so obsessed with watching pop culture commercials, and it's funny because I remember specifically one time my dad came home from work and I asked him, Dad, where's a theater near you? Like you hear on the coming to a theater near you, because I wanted to watch those movies, and we don't have a theater in Barrow. Like a theater near me is 700 miles away, but I was so lost by some of these things, right? Anyways, because I was just a kid interested, just so interested, and pop culture it had the best marketing, and this is what's cool, this is what's not cool. I found myself in like sort of an identity crisis, and I wanted to throw away everything that was of my Inupiat heritage and culture away. I wanted to throw it away because TV is not saying that's cool. TV is saying all of this other stuff is cool. You got to have the coolest jackets or shoes, or have to look a certain way. You have to wear your hair a certain way. You have to have certain kind of makeup. You have to be a look. You have to be slim. That's what's beautiful. All of these things that are very dangerous to a young Indigenous girl growing up. This idea of what is beautiful and what is not. And I look back at it now and I see how dangerous that narrative was to me, who's just forming my opinions of the world. And I have even had to tell my mom sorry many, many times, because there were instances where she would hand make a brand new parka for me every fall time before it got cold. And after I started becoming aware, I didn't want that parka. I wanted what I saw on the commercials. And I'd say, Mom, I don't want that kind. Can we go buy one from the store? All my friends have the store-bought one. And I feel sorry now that I think about it. One, that was very offensive to my mother, but also my friends probably didn't have somebody that could make a parka like that for them. And so I really found myself questioning who I was. And it wasn't until I was about maybe 15 or 16 where something snapped. And it was around the time that I started spending time away from my home community. And I would travel for sports and academics. And every time I was away, I would miss what I had at home. And because my family is a part of a whaling crew. We're active hunters. We're providers. We very much in a part of our Inupiat traditional dance groups, all of these things. And when I was away, I missed that. And I started to then have a second realization that this is what's beautiful, even though media is not portraying, like, media is a lie. It's a complete lie. It's a manipulation. And what I have in community is what is beautiful. And that is what is strength. And that is what I should be clinging on to in order to be strong. Like, this is my identity, not this outside thing. That is not who I am. And once I started going back to the path of valuing who I was and where I came from, I started to walk taller. I started to be more confident. And I started to think, well, if I'm feeling like this, geez, just imagine how many of my peers must be feeling like this. And that, even back then, that was when I realized, like, I need to be the one creating content. I want to be able to create content that is something that my peers can identify with, or young girls can see and know and be represented. And that is why there's all of these different things that I've done over the course of my career that feels like it kind of culminated with TikTok in 2020. And when that blew up and all of my media went viral, I was like, whoa, I could really do this. I guess I can do this. I created things that I knew my peers wanted to see. And I didn't realize how many more people besides my peers would be interested in it as well. And because the sort of thing that happened when people received that message, they reached out to me and said, "Wow, man, thank you. Thank you so much for saying this." And it wasn't just like people my age, it was young girls, or it was foster moms with young girls that they had no other access to culture other than seeing what videos that I was creating, right? I had girls even say, "Well, I'm just starting my period. What do you suggest? Is there anything I should know?" And that let my heart sink. Like, some of these young ladies do not have a safe space, safe community. they don't have those role models. And so anytime that I would receive messages from others, it would help me in a way to shape the next message that I was going to say. I realized then that there are so many people that are leaning on me. And if it just helps make their life a little bit better, then I need to take that stage and I need to say something to help our communities. And we're, as Native people, we are no stranger to wanting to help our community. So, but I feel like it's just been a natural progression of this role of taking my place in media. Maybe not necessarily like being given it, but taking it and pulling it and getting as much as I could for the benefit of my people. That's how I've seen it. And so
Yeah.
far it's been pretty good.
It's been incredible to see all that you've done through social media, but a lot of times with all of us, it's just taking the first step, right? It can be so scary to stand in front of your phone, especially with TikTok. I do not know how to use TikTok very well, but I'm learning. And it is so important, especially when you're talking about young girls. There is such a need for positive content for them. Because reflecting, like, as you were sharing about being a young girl and like looking on television and not seeing people that looked like you, I think everybody in different ways, every woman can relate to that in different ways. I'm grateful that I grew up. I have a incredible mom who's since passed away, but she wanted her kids to experience all different cultures. And so we were Irish, we did Irish dancing, and it was like the weird thing. It was before Riverdance, before, people knew what it was. And so it was kind of like, Mom, like, can I just do ballet like everybody else? Can I just be like, can I dye my hair blonde so I look like everybody else? We all have those moments in life. But my mom wanted us to experience different cultures, and we live in Detroit. So it's like there were a lot of different cultures here, but we grew up going to powwows, and I dreamed about being a jingle dancer and like would bring all my friends to those. And then we'd go to Mexican Fest. And I think it's so important for all of us to culture ourselves, but also find opportunities to bring culture to people. And that's what's so cool about social media, is just you sharing your story or sharing your own experiences or just your own perspective, right? Thinking about these different notes that you're getting from girls and saying like, all right, if nobody else is going to share their perspective about starting their cycles or whatever else is going on in their life, maybe I can be the person to do it and be a positive impact. And you're doing that through social media.
Oh yeah, you got to be the change that you want to see, and it's been a journey on figuring that out. And the funny thing is that so TikTok actually used to be called Musically. A lot of people don't know that it was called Musically. I had the app when it was called Musically, like in 2016. Very hardly anyone knows that. Anyways, they rebranded, they changed it to TikTok. So I had the app. My daughter used to make Musically. So, Mom, let's do this, when she was way younger, and then stopped using it. The pandemic happened, and my mom was like, let's make a TikTok, because if you're just like anybody in the pandemic, you already watched everything on TV, then you watched everything on Netflix, then you go on a YouTube, and then it's like, I can't find anything else worth watching. So it's like people were gravitating to TikTok, short form videos, and there's all these challenges. And my mom was like, okay, this is fun. I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do to help pass my time because I'm stuck at home. Oh, no, I'm not stuck at home. I'm safe at home and I'm going to make videos. So every time my mom would come over, let's make a TikTok. So I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, people are actually really using this. This is pretty cool. So I started getting into it. My kids, of course, they know all the slang, cap, no cap, all they know like the culture of the youth. And they would say, Mom, no, that's not what's popular right now. You have to do this trend, or you have to use this viral song, or you should do this, Mom. Like they were my little consultants between my mom and my two kids. It was where a lot of the content idea generation was coming from. Plus, I mean, I've been a part of video production projects through my career. So I already kind of knew certain things that were not so common, but pretty exciting, but kind of weird, but a little bit different. So like one of the biggest, the most viral TikToks I had was about an ice cellar, an underground ice cellar, our shirlok, where we store our meat, all of the animals that we're hunting. It goes down there, it's like, if you're going to catch a whale, where are you going to store it? You have to have this big underground cellar to put it if you're going to feed the community throughout the year, right? So I created a video on that, and it was like boom, overnight. It just it just went viral. I didn't expect it to become so powerful, but obviously it went to show that there's a way of life in the United States that not a lot of people are familiar of, and yet we're still in America. For us, it kind of goes to the saying, out of sight, out of mind, right? We did not have fiber optic cable in our part of Alaska until I want to say about 2017. If you could look it up, it's the Quintillion Arctic Fiber Line, which before that, it was basically satellite. One of my, we'll put it in perspective. My son is 13. One of his very first words was loading. He would watch YouTube, and you see the circle going around. That means loading. He would dance. He'd get so excited while it's loading. It would take forever. Like it would take half an hour just to load a 2-minute video, right? But then the fiber optic line came, and then now we're able to have better connectivity. After 2017, we are the have-nots of the United States in many ways, more than just connectivity. But now that we have connectivity, we got Starlink, the fiber line. Now we can share our story with the world. It doesn't have to be somebody else coming in to interview us, because that's typically what happened. New York Times wants to do a story on the Arctic. Well, they're going to come in and talk and interview somebody, and they take whatever they liked best. They're going to formulate their story of whatever's going to sell. They're going to spin it how they want to, and they're going to tell that story. Well, what if that's not the story that we as Inupiat people think is most important? Well, it's not up to us, because they're the storytellers in this one. So we have to be able to recapture that stage, tell our own stories for our perspectives and our values to shine through. And that's finally happening now. It's still a little bit slow. It's still catching on, but there's more of us now that are out there telling our own stories.
If you're enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a new inspiring episode coming out every single week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast today. These things, it takes time, but it's so important for women like you to speak up. That's what this podcast is all about. And as you were sharing just about the media, I started this podcast because I worked in PR and media, and I was frustrated by the fact that women weren't given the space, women and girls who were doing incredible things weren't given the space to tell their stories in the way that they want. And I kind of understand sometimes with media, they have 30 seconds to tell a story, and they pick the most interesting, soundbite that they think is going to be the thing that catches fire. But what's so cool about social media is it's just pulling back the curtain and creating this space for women like you, for podcasts like this to exist, for individuals to share their stories. And even for so long, I have such a heart for forgotten about populations, and that can look like a lot of different things. But I think for the indigenous peoples, it has for so long, the indigenous people have been forgotten about. And it's cool to see social media kind of open up this space for real stories to be told. But then even in culture, in TV shows, you talked about movies before. We had Alaska Daily, the TV show, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Lily Gladstone using this opportunity to raise awareness and talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And then I know that you just had posted about Jodie Foster's Emmy speech, and just hearing her talk about your people. What does that mean to you? What does that all mean to you?
It's a start. That's a big deal. It's a big deal to be acknowledged. In our Inupiat culture, that is it is huge for us just to be acknowledged. Because like I mentioned earlier, we can't do it alone. We cannot survive, especially in this sort of place that is so unforgiving. It takes community to survive, and it takes community for us to thrive, right? We all lean on each other for help from time to time. So acknowledgement is huge for us. One of the worst things you can do is you can walk past somebody and just pretend they don't exist. And I feel like for a long time, Hollywood or the world at large has done that. They've walked away and forgot about us and acted as if we didn't exist. Other than like a culture that's in a museum, like, oh, look, these are the Eskimo people of the far north. This is how they live. People are comfortable with going to a museum and seeing an old time culture. And oh, okay, that's them. That was from long time ago. They're gone. These people don't exist anymore. That's how a lot of people think. So when Jodie Foster acknowledged us, that it's like, whoa, that's awesome, because we are still here. We have a way of life that is just as any culture around the world transforms and changes over time. So do we. And for her to acknowledge us and say that this is their story that I was able to help share, that's big. Hollywood oftentimes likes to sensationalize and dramatize. This, I don't necessarily agree with the storyline of it for that True Detective, and I won't give it away for those that haven't watched it before. But I understand that they have to make it dramatic for people to watch it, because it's fiction, right? A lot of times when people will do a story on Alaska, there's a little bit of truth in there here and there, and sometimes it can blur the lines for the watchers, and they automatically think and perceive like, okay, that must be how it really is. They did a really great job with the culture and making sure they got it authentic, but the storyline, that's debatable. And all too often when I go out of state and I meet people that, oh, you're from Alaska? Yeah, I've seen that show, Last Alaskans. I've seen Life Below Zero. I know about you guys. I know you. Like, no, you don't know me, and you might think you know about our way of life, but if that's TV, they always make it dramatic. You won't know it until you see it or you hear it firsthand if you're there. And it's just so far remote and so far removed from everybody else. It's hard to truly know who we are, how we live, and what's best for us. And not knowing or knowing a false narrative can be very dangerous for us, because there's people that are making laws and determining what's good for us or what's bad for us so far removed down in Washington, D.C., and their choices are affecting our lives in the far north. And they're so far removed, it's out of sight, out of mind. They're not going to deal with it, right? Or they're not going to see, or they don't get to see the repercussions firsthand, but we have to live them. So it's important for people to become informed about everything going on in the world.
That's why what you're doing with social media and what so many people are doing on social media is so important. That also can be sensationalized sometimes as well. We can all fall into a little bit of the same world as Hollywood, but it's so important to utilize social media in that way. And then also for people to read. My grandfather used to always say the problem with people in the world today is they don't read anymore. they just watch something and they're like, oh, I saw that TV show and that's what it's like in Alaska. And it's like, no, you should be. I loved reading just about your story and reading about your work because, I can't fully grasp everything about your story or where you live, but I can try. And that's why this podcast is so important, to hear the real stories, the real perspectives, to hear a glimpse into your story. I know that we can't talk about everything, but it's so important for all of us to be curious about our brothers and sisters and the experiences of other people. And also in this world, it can be so divisive. Right now, we don't have to get into politics, but it's so divisive where people can't even have conversations anymore. And instead, we should be looking at things out of curiosity and say, like, why does somebody believe that? Or why are they thinking that? Or what can I do? That's what I love about this podcast, is we elevate these stories and then create opportunities for everyone to get involved in the work that you're doing and share your TikToks and share your social media posts, because it is so important. We can all do something. So I want to ask you about the Arctic Slope Community Foundation, which you currently serve as the executive director. How did you get involved in the foundation?
So over the course of my career, I've worked in various capacities, and it's always been about developing our communities and helping our people live better. And for me, I always believe that we can help our people live better by getting back to our roots, right? So I previously worked for the North Slope Borough Inupiat Heritage Center as a museum curator. And that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. I was able to work with collections and transference of knowledge and elders and youth conference events. I then worked in community economic development for our Native Corporation, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. And so it was my job to go into the villages once again, rather than do my curatorial work. I carried out different trainings and conferences and different research projects on our Inupiat way of life. And that was so much fun. There became the opportunity available to work at the Arctic Slope Community Foundation. And as soon as I saw it, I jumped on the opportunity. That was in late 2019. And by February 2020, I joined the ASCF. Oh boy, what a time to take over a nonprofit whose mission is to help improve the quality of life. There's a pandemic. Oh no. Like all of a sudden, the world went upside down. Everything was shutting down. People couldn't work because they're, getting sick, or shutting down programs, can't be around people. Everyone's got to stay home. So it's like, okay, then what am I going to do to help improve the quality of life? Well, at that time, food security, which has always been a big thing for our people. Food insecurity is a real problem in the Arctic. No matter if you're in Alaska, Canada, Greenland, the Arctic is one of the most food insecure places. So I was asked to address that and work on that and make sure we were funneling funds into our villages for that. Besides that, another big initiative was making sure that we could provide training in our communities, so that when people were ready to get back in the workforce or start their own businesses, we had that. And then we also had training for our teachers, because we have a lot of turnover in our part of the world. All of our teachers are imported. We began investing money into our teacher aides so that we can grow our own teachers. So those were the sorts of initiatives that I was tasked with in the beginning of 2020. And the work's never done. There's always ways to improve. And I believe education and capacity building is the number one thing that we can do to help our people. Not by just, that there's that old adage, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for life. That is really the sort of work that we are trying to help achieve by helping build capacity in our villages for them to become self-sustaining. And so to this day, we still carry out all sorts of training that we believe is going to help our people, whether it's financial literacy or supporting workforce development with our people in the tribal educator apprenticeship, or helping teach people about our subsistence practices and giving them the tools and the supplies and the fuel necessary to help them succeed. Those are the biggest areas that we are helping our people now. And so far it's been working pretty well, but we are very limited in what we're able to do because of the high costs. The Arctic, Alaska in itself is very expensive. The Arctic add a whole new layer because everything's got to be shipped in when it comes to equipment, food, etc. Fuel even has to be shipped in. The Arctic, we live on a mixed subsistence and cash economy, which it's doable. It's very expensive, and it requires you to be really mindful of your resource management, your resource stewardship. You have to be responsible. Otherwise, say you only have enough money for so many bullets and so many drums of gas, and you need to go out and you need to provide food for your family. Well, if you don't see any caribou, then what, right? Then you're going to have to buy food, but you spent most of your money on gas and bullets for your rifle. So you have to know your traditional ways as to what is the best time and where's the best place to go. And even down to when if you do get an animal, processing it, what's the best way to process it so that you use every part of the animal, right? So those are the different challenges, I think, that we're hoping to provide support for in this day and age.
The needs are so great of the people, and I know there's so much to be done, and I know that you'll continue to grow and evolve and hopefully help so many more people. And I know as different people kind of come into your umbrella as well, they'll bring ideas and new experiences. I know even since you've come on board, you have been able to grow the foundation and grow the things that you're doing. This podcast is all about stories. Of course, I wanted to share a little bit about your story, but I would love to hear a story or two of people that have been helped through the Arctic Slope Community Foundation. And I know there are probably so many stories, even in the past couple of years since you've come on board, but I think stories are such a great way to kind of show people or get people to think about the impact of your work. But is there a story or two, maybe a story or two that really touched your heart and shows the power of the work you're doing?
Something that immediately comes to mind is there's a young lady. She lives in the Brooks Range, and she is a part of our tribal educator apprenticeship program, which that's a program where we take paraprofessionals or teacher aides, and they sign up to be in our apprenticeship, which allows them to learn through distance college classes and on-the-job training apprenticeship and after 4 years, they become certified teachers. Now, this program is groundbreaking. It's just started. It's registered on the Department of Labor's apprentice website, right? She came to us and she loves her community. She wants to be that person that helps those kids. And at one point in time, someone said to her, "Oh, you're not a real teacher." She's a real teacher. You're not a real teacher. When she's a teacher's aide and she is teaching the kids, she's a mother. I really believe our mothers around the world are our kids' first teachers. So what is the definition of a teacher, right? That's besides anyway. So Someone said that to her, you're not a real teacher. That person's a real teacher. Because what's the difference? That one was certified and she was not. That really upset me. And I said, don't worry. You're in this program. You are going to become a certified teacher. You're going to be the one that's leading our kids' classroom. I know you are a lot of times because the teacher's not there. The teacher's not you have to take over. I know that. But you're going to be certified. You're going to be given that actual title of certified teacher. Those kids are going to look up to you, and you're going to help be able to incorporate our Inupiat way of life into the curriculum. You're going to help these kids understand these standards that they're trying to reach through place-based learning, because that is a part of our program, right? It's going to take time. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. And so we've had to be cheerleaders of the people that they see something, they want a goal, and they're going to get there, but we have to help. We have to help them and hold their hand. So that's a program that we're involved in right now that is really exciting. And those apprentices are passionate. They are the ones that we can see they truly care about those children. So that's one example. When it comes to food security, I would say there are countless stories, but we've been able to help the real leaders of food security across our region. So when you think about food security, what does that look like in Arctic Alaska? Well, some people would say, the church, they're leaders of food security because they distribute food. They run a food bank. They make sure the hungry get fed. Some people might say that, but the real leaders of the food security in our region are our whaling captains and crews. They are the ones that are selflessly going out to hunt for bowhead whales, which are these huge creatures, right? So they range anywhere from like 20 to 75 feet long. And every foot of a bowhead whale is 1 ton of meat and muktuk. And so if you have a 30-foot whale that you've killed and landed and you pulled up in the community butcher, that's 30 tons of meat and muktuk for the community so that community doesn't go hungry. So our whalers, they are the leaders of food security. They go out and hunt. They give it away. They go out to feed the crews, the whaling crews, the community. It's distributed every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and June Nalukatuk event. And anyone can get it. Even people that come in as tourists, they can get a little taste. This is who's really feeding our communities. It's our whaling crews, our hunters, and ASCF has been able to provide them with various equipment, supplies, tools, whatever they need in order to be successful. We've purchased freezer connexes for them, which are these huge connexes, like shipping containers that have been transformed into freezers because climate change is affecting our underground cellars, right? So that's the place to put the meat and muktuk in those. We've purchased rope so that they can pull up the whale. We've purchased new block and tackles so that they can pull it up with maybe less manpower, more effective and efficient, right? We are very much intertwined with the needs of our community. And we aren't the champion of anything other than we are the conduit that's helping make sure that money, resources are being given to those needs that are identified by the communities themselves. And it is a lot of work because we have 8 villages that we have to provide support for.
And you're providing support in so many different ways too. It's just incredible the work that you're doing. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number 1 Girl REVO. We're on TikTok at One Girl Revolution, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at One Girl Revolution. That's the number One Girl Revolution. You can find all of our social media links, previous podcast episodes, our Emmy-nominated documentary series, and more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. For people that are listening, I know that there are so many people right now saying, I didn't know any of this. I'm so glad that I'm listening to this episode. What can people do to support your work, and what can they do to emulate it in their own communities? Maybe there are people that are suffering from food insecurity in a different way, but what can people do? We'll start with, what can people do to support you and your work and the foundation?
Yeah. I would say, if people are wanting to support us, learn more about us. You can easily search us up on Google, Arctic Slope Community Foundation. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a website. I believe it's arcticslopecommunity.org is our website. And then you want to take it a step further, consider giving us a donation so that we can continue this good work that we're doing. Learn about our different programs, because we do so many different things, and it all depends on what the communities are wanting to see. And we make it our business to know what's going on in our villages. Staying connected to them is so important. So if somebody was trying to emulate the work that we're doing, I would say the number one thing, the most important thing is relationships, relationship building. We wouldn't be able to help our region's people if they didn't feel comfortable with us. Because in order for us to provide help and support, we need to know the areas that they need help. And oftentimes for our people anyways, our Inupiat people, they are very strong, very proud, and a lot of times they don't like to ask for help. So in order for them to get a place where they feel vulnerable enough to ask for help, they need to be able to trust who they're speaking with. In order to get past that initial layer, right, you have to have trust and compassion and respect. And so I would encourage anybody else that's listening that wants to say maybe they want to start their own community foundation. That's for us, we serve an indigenous population. We serve the whole region, and they're not all indigenous, but a majority of them are indigenous to the area, right? Understand those people, develop relationships with those people, have an open door policy, get to know your neighbor a little bit more, and just get that initial network going. And then you can do that work of then seeking resources. And it all depends. It depends on who you're serving and how you serve them. Ours is a little bit unique, I suppose, in the way that we've managed it. There's not a lot of community foundations that serve rural Alaska. And part of the reason is there's not a lot of money in rural Alaska. So it's a challenge to even raise funds to be able to funnel funds into the villages. We wouldn't be able to do a lot of what we do if it wasn't for federal grants, to be honest, and support from corporate organizations and general fundraising.
Yeah, well, there are so many different ways that all of us can get involved. And I know even if there are corporations that are listening and they have some sort of goods that could be helpful to your foundation or to the people that you're serving, they can also reach out. I will put the website in the show notes. I will put all your different social media so people can easily follow you and follow the foundation and everything that you're doing. But it's so important for all of us to be aware of what's going on and to find ways that we can serve in some way. I always say on this podcast that we have time, talent, and treasure, and that can ebb and flow throughout our lives, right? Sometimes you don't have treasure, you don't have money to give, but
yeah,
a free and easy way that people can support the work that you're doing is share about it, follow on social media and share, or share some of your videos. just to open other people's eyes, and you never know who's going to see it. And maybe someone else can give treasure, or they have a talent, they're a graphic designer and they can design something, or a website developer, or they have an idea just to do a fundraiser for the work that you're doing. And so we can all do something. So I will make sure that I have all the different links and ways that people can get in touch with you and get in touch with the foundation. I have a personal question for you, because you are so inspiring to me and you're doing such incredible work. And I'm sure that there are such difficult days and painful days when you're seeing so much suffering, but then there are also joyful days like the story you told about this person going through your program and being able to help other people, and you see the ripple effect. So that can be positive. But if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day, whether it be through the foundation or the work that you're doing through media creation, what would you say that root is?
That is a tough question to answer. When I was little, so I was named after my grandmother. My name Patuk is my grandmother's name, and my mom's mom. And she was a teacher. She was an Inupiat language teacher. And I watched her in action, and I would see she had the energy that could fill a room, a presence that made everybody happy and smile and would uplift them. And even after she left her teaching job, because she was a teacher, I think like 25 years or so, she loved to go out in public. She always had me bring her to the store. She was a little old lady with severe rheumatoid arthritis. It was painful for her to go anywhere, but she wanted to go to the store. She didn't necessarily want to go to get groceries. She wanted to go to see people. And she would see her former students and say, "Oh, that was my student. Oh, that," and she would know their Inupiat name, because all of us have Inupiat names and English names, right? And she would say all sorts of good words about them, something that was special to them. And they would smile and she would smile and she'd be like, "I'm so proud of you. You make me so happy." And they would transform them, and they would leave walking a little bit taller too, right? It was just something so powerful. And I saw that and I was like, wow, it doesn't take much to brighten up someone else's day. And she was a teacher, right? And she helped teach and transform people's lives to give them the tools that they have for life, right? And so I was like, this can't be too hard to do. This can't be too hard to do at all. And when I was little, I remember laying in bed with her. I slept over at her house, me and my other cousin. We're laying in bed, each under her arm, and we're looking up at the ceiling. And I see a bumper sticker on one of the shelves, and it said, "Get involved." And I was like, "Akka, what does that mean? Get involved." She says, "Get involved. That means you need to step up and take part in the world around you. You need to help. You need to know what's going on in the world. You need to know what's going on in your community. And you need to step up and help, even especially when no one else wants to do it." That's what it means to get involved. And I never forgot that. And I never forgot the sort of energy that she could have and bring over people. And I loved that. I looked up to her. And so I feel like if I could do even just a quarter of what she did, the world could be a better place, you know?
Well, it is a better place, and you're such a beacon of light and such an example, and you're continuing her legacy through your life, through the work that you're doing, and through all your social media posts and everything. I know that so many people love you and follow you, and I'm just so grateful to have had you on the podcast, and I can't wait to continue to stay in touch and find ways to support the great work that you're doing. Before I let you go, and you sort of teed up my next question, because I was going to ask you, who is a one girl revolution in your life? You are a one girl revolution. Your grandmother is a one girl revolution, very obviously. So it could be the same thing, but who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
Oh man. I mean, if I did not see this huge network of aunties, strong, intelligent, brave aunties that came before me. I don't know that I would have the same courage to do half the stuff that I do. I've really been supported by a network of, I like to call them the network of strong aunties. They're like a board of directors for me. And there's so many of them because I've been able to watch them, because I'm the kind of person that I'm a visual learner, hands-on learner, but in order for me to know that I can do it, I kind of have to see it happen. And there are so many different women, most of them my aunties by blood, who have helped shape me. My mom, I've got my auntie Doreen Levitt, I've got my auntie Tara Sweeney, I've got my auntie Ethel Uppick, I've got my great aunt Mary Ellen Mohawk. I mean, there's so many, the list goes on and on. And because they carry that strength, and I feel like they've helped break trail for me. And so what I say even to my friends and my daughter, I say, I want my ceiling to be my daughter's floor. And I really do feel like if all of my aunties didn't break that trail to create this ceiling for me, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants through all of those aunties that went before me, right? It's not just any one person. It takes a community of women to hold up and lift up the next generation of women leaders.
That is so powerful. I just wrote down your quote there. I want my ceiling to be my daughter's floor. That's so powerful. And that's what we should all be striving to do for the next generation, whether it's our daughters or the girls that are coming behind us, that we can set that ceiling, and then that can be the next generation's floor. You are such an inspiration. Before I let you go, I have one last question for you. If you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
You can do anything you set your mind to. Anything. All it takes is a dream. Takes a dream, and then, it doesn't happen overnight, especially if it's a big dream, right? But if you talk about it, that's a start, verbalize it, write it down, develop plans, a scheme, come up with the idea and how you're going to get there. If you really want it, all you have to do is visualize it, talk about it. You have to make it happen. It's not just going to happen on its own. And never be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I love it when people ask questions, because that's how we can all take ourselves to the next level. If we all assume everybody else knows the answers, and we're afraid of looking like a fool, and that prevents us from asking questions, well, then we're all going to be fools if the other people don't know either, and they're hoping somebody asks that question, right? We have to be able to discuss things and get it out there for us to be all on the same page, for us to understand and know.
Learn from one another.
For sure.
Yeah. Learn and grow together and learn from one another. Well, Patuk, it's so amazing to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all of your incredible work and everything you continue to do.
Yep, for sure. No problem. Thank you.
For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.